Hi, welcome to XReality podcast. I am the host, Dominique and beside me is the guest, Oscar. Hi, Oscar. Would you share a little bit about your background with us?
Hi, Dominique. Yeah, great to be here. And for sure, I'm Oscar Cartagena. I'm originally from Venezuela, born and raised in Venezuela, but living in Chile for the past 15 years at least. So my background is I've been working on this convergence between technology, art, creativity, and business, basically for the past 27 to 28 years, more or less. Um, I've always been an entrepreneur, always been trying to push for my own things. So I don't have a lot of office experience, you might say. Maybe about from those 28 years, maybe I worked for a different company that wasn't mine for maybe a year and a half, which I'm grateful for, by the way, because it built the foundations of what I wanted to do. So I'm a computer scientist by formation, engineering. Used to be a developer, but I also dabbed a lot in different things with graphic design and video editing. And at some point, I started doing a lot of graphic design as well. So I've been here and there, all related with computers and technology. So for the past, I'd say maybe 10 years, I've been very focused in Chile on building an XR industry, basically from scratch. There were a lot of companies, no, not a lot, but a few dozen companies. And we saw the opportunity of actually trying to make Chile the hub for XR technologies in the region. So
Mm.
we developed the trade union association with that in mind, kind of trying to push for the idea of creating a federation, a Latin American federation of XR experiences and companies. So
Mm.
we've been working towards that end for the past 8 years, more or less. And yeah, that's been great. We've done a lot on that sense, not only in Chile, but also, we've managed to make a network in Latin America of people that are interested in these things. So as I mentioned before, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have many businesses. I have many interests as well. So yeah, that's a quick nutshell of what I do.
Wow, that's amazing. So, may I ask you what types of for example, what's your journey of being where you are today? For example, like you mentioned, you had a lot of like entrepreneur experience, and you only work in the office for 1.5 year. I think it's very different from the majority of us because for me, I've been working kind of like a here and there. It's all other people's business, but in between, sometimes 1 to 2 years, I work on my own, more like a venture. And sometimes I personally feel like if I have like a kind of like a job or a project going on working for other people and I have like a side gigs, for example, like a podcast,
Yeah.
and I'm happy. But I think what types of like a personality or like a for example, you see like when starting a business, there's always a hype, right? The reason we jump into our venture is because we saw something in demand and we find out that, wow, if I jump out, I can earn much more than what I currently have. So yeah, so I have like my own studio, which I earn pretty good during COVID time. But I think right now as a creator, I can tell like a lot of like a scarcity mindset. For example, like before it's
Mhm.
so easy to sort of like a resume out, but now it feels like people don't need it's probably too many of us, so people don't really need in like it feels like not really in demand, and a lot of like a virtual AI recruiter, for example, if you click the link and there will be like a recording screen or like there's a chatbot and ask you some questions and you need to reply. Humans interaction is getting less and less, and every job has like 1,000 like application. What do you see? Like, how do you become that confident? Like, oh, I can get like I can solve people's problem versus like trying to get like a project or get like apply jobs? Like what do you see the entrepreneurship versus
I
sitting in
think
the
it starts off as an idea that you are really, really looking forward to push out there,
hmm,
and that you have the resilience and the perseverance to do so.
hmm,
But you also need a very solid, like close network of people that are going to help you out. I
hmm.
mean, in my case, I've always been a solopreneur, not only an entrepreneur, I've been a solopreneur. I've done it all on my own by myself. I think that
Wow.
maybe 5 years ago, I started my first business with another business partner. So that's over 40 years old when I finally managed to develop the trust to
Mm,
actually have somebody else jump in the business with me. But I think that it's possible only because you have either a family or your wife or your nucleus that can support you in the hard times, because there will be impossibly hard times. And I think that's those periods are when you kind of lose your flex on entrepreneurship, and you kind of
yeah.
wonder like, okay, so am I really going to be able to manage this? In it's because it's a wild ride.
Yeah,
It's
right.
really, really tough at some point, because you can have many months of doing really great, and then you could have 2 or 3 months without earning anything. So
Yeah.
I think that when you have that, it adds to the reality that when you have that entrepreneurial spirit, especially if you're in the creative arts kind of universe, not you're not coming from a different, more structured side of things, you are
Mm,
not good at managing your own money. So it's not like you're
mm.
gonna be really good at doing administration and saving up for those really hard times that eventually might come, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
you see that a lot happening, and it's really, I think
Yeah.
it's just natural. It's like when you are an artist and you create things, you have no idea what the true value of your art is, right?
Mm,
So you don't know how to sell it properly. And I think it just adds up as to how we are formed in our professional careers, or how things are just work within society, because it's just the way it is in a way. So
yeah.
I think that there's a lot of, I think that society has a lot of debt towards the
Mm,
creative aspect of life, in
yeah.
regards of teaching young professionals how to sell their creativity and sell their
Oh.
time and be
Mm,
able to actually own their time. The concept of owning your time and being
yeah.
able to actually proudly charge for that, because it is my
Yeah.
time. You're using my experience and whatnot. But obviously, you also get to that point through seniority. So I think that the hard times now is
Mm.
that youngsters just want to jump from zero to hero, right?
Oh.
They
Hmm.
don't want to go through the process. They just want to be a manager just coming out of college.
Oh yeah, I think of right now you see like a middle manager is pretty much get exit out, and I think a manager without a technical skills or the experience, it's very hard to for people with the technical skills to follow, because sometimes I was under a manager a long time ago. That manager was pretty senior and he doesn't really know what's the technology. He has to keep asking us. And I was like, how can I even being led by you? It's like, how can I even follow you if you don't even know what I'm doing and I have to explain to you and you have to quote. And every time you quote, you seems like giving me less and something impossible. So it's very hard for a leader or a manager to not really know what's going on with the project and just having an Excel sheet and keep tracking, right?
I mean, it's tough because I think that when you jump from being on a kind of, might put it this way, in a productive mindset, in the sense that you make things, right? I mean, the best way to put it is that there's a major difference between the owner of the creative studio and the people that create things inside the studio.
Yeah.
Even they, even if they both have the same amount of knowledge about the business, the requirements are
Mm,
completely different.
yeah.
So maybe you have a manager that maybe he's not up to date on certain technologies, but maybe his vision of how to apply the
Mm,
technology far exceeds
yeah.
that, that what he's missing.
Yes.
Because when you are a manager,
Hmm.
what you have to be really good at is choosing people, because
Hmm.
there will be always a lot of people that are far better than you
Yeah.
doing far different tasks, and
Yeah.
it's totally natural. I mean, we are limited, a limited species in a way,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
um as long as you have that, and you can, and I think that's why, what they call like soft skills are
Hmm.
so crucial today in technology's world and
Yeah.
creative side aspect of it, at least. Because now we have this mix. I mean, it's so mixed right now,
Hmm.
creativity and technology. Before, we had like a lot more separation. You needed bridges to cross. Now it's all mushed together, right? So
Hmm.
I think that soft skills and soft skill development is crucial right now to actually survive in an office space,
Hmm.
and not even going into full detail as the skill set that you need to be a good manager or a good leader
Hmm.
nowadays in the technological and creative sectors, because you need a certain kind of recipe of people that have different skill sets
Hmm.
and that they're not taught in the university. You don't go out
Yeah.
of the university like a fully fledged professional. You may know things like, say, 3D modeling or video game development. You turn out like very specialized in that sense. And when you go up to the manager level,
Hmm.
you have to know about the whole thing,
Yeah.
the whole process. And, the thought process is very different. It's like, I think that managers, get a raw deal as well. I mean, they have to be really good at a whole bunch of things. I
Yeah.
root for the managers a lot nowadays because they have it hard to, even if they get paid more, they still have a lot more work to do. That's very different from the production side of things. When I switched from A to B, I mean, the difference is humongous because you have to be looking into other things that when you are making the product itself, you are not able to actually see.
Yeah.
It's
It's like
not on
you
your
see one tree versus seeing the entire forest, right?
exactly. Yeah. You're focused when you're producing, making the stuff, you are completely focused on a tree. You
Hmm.
have to be able to see the whole forest. And I think that's maybe not enough talk about skill that a leader, a manager needs to have very well honed so he
Hmm.
can do his job properly, because your management skills are basically based on your ability of envisioning the project or whatever it is you're doing, or the sprint, whatever. So if you don't have that capacity, then you're not going to be a good manager, even if you had the best grades in school. It's not
Yeah.
about technological prowess. It's about social connection and being able to actually be a leader, having that kind of sort of built in you. I think that to some extent you either have that, kind of magnetic thing about people following you, or you don't. And so it becomes either easier or harder to be a good manager in that regard, even if you have leadership skills.
Yeah, yeah, and I saw that on my LinkedIn, there are a lot of like a PM. They share like some interesting like AI tools that allows you. For example, I saw like a MCP. I think the name is like MCP. You plug in, and on the left hand side of your screen, and on the right hand side of your screen is like a Unity or Blender. You type, and then the game or 3D model will show up. So, what do you see these types of things? And as far as I know, a lot of PM are very, very interested to it. For example, one of my friend Tim, he usually has like a weekly podcast with me on XR Weekly News. He is a PM producer. And he said that before, actually, he didn't know how to code. And because of right now, a lot of text prompt like a Grok 3.
Mhm.
He even used Grok 3 to create Like you know, like early days, we have some 2D games that you own a coffee shop and there are guests coming in and you need to serve
Right,
it.
right,
More
yeah.
like a digital types of like a arcade game or like a small, like a nice top-down game. And he was creating it and he said, oh, he used Grok, just describe it, and he put the code in. And I was impressed because before, people who doesn't know how to do design, who doesn't know how to code, they must have they need to find something, for example, like soft skills. I feel like a lot of things are more like a segment. Oh, you are a designer. Oh, you are a developer, and you are a manager. Now manager can directly produce a very good work. What do you see this like empowerment for the, it feels like a trend right now, like yeah.
I mean, there's so much going on right now regarding AI creation. For example, I have a friend, a good friend, Amir, that has a company called Neloom.
Mm,
Neloom.ai.
mm.
They won, I think, best creation tool at the AIXR Awards in Rotterdam
Oh
late
wow.
last year.
Mm,
And it's a very interesting platform where it's basically prompt to AR
mm.
XR. It's prompt
Oh
to XR, basically. Could you
wow.
say, I want to create a scene that has a house and a dog and a guy talking in German while another one is answering in English and
Mm,
they're speaking blah blah blah. You write that whole prompt and it will go out and build the 3D models, the whole animation, the audio files. I mean, it's impressive,
mm.
very impressive. So that kind of solves one of the main issues that we have within the XR industry, which is content creation.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what you kind of get bored of really quickly is that you just burn through all the content and then what's next? Sometimes there's just no next. So I think that not only for regular people, but also for teachers and educators, where I think that XR has got to become a more of a very useful tool. I
Mm,
think that teachers and educators, we have this kind of idea within multiversity guys that they will become eventually content creators for their students.
yeah.
So how do we enable them to understand, say, spatial design,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Or spatial positioning of things and how to think in 3D.
Mm,
So when they have these kind of tools that more sooner than later they will have, they can use them to effectively train or teach their students in better ways than we have now. Because I think that the whole system has to change. So we'll go into that probably after, because we are we are not on the right path regarding
mm,
education. Basically, I mean, to put it bluntly, it's changed too much. Society changed too much the past 200 years to keep trying to do the same thing over and over. So how are we changing that? I mean, but it's also very difficult, as I mentioned before when we were talking, is that when you start doing the whole social, political, economic connections,
yeah.
when you translate the will of technology and whatever good it may be, then you start connecting it to society. Then you start to kind of see how it becomes harder, right? I mean, it starts to
Mm,
crash into certain things, and then it becomes difficult because the whole system's built for
mm,
and on top of
yeah.
certain things that are taken for granted, like
Yeah.
education and how we prepare people for real world professions,
Yeah.
and how the whole work system depends on college degrees to
Mm,
actually evaluate who's better than who and who's going to cost
yeah.
more than who, right? So
Yeah.
how is that just changing that affects society as a whole, and
Mm,
not only affects from here onward but also retroactively. So I think that's why this has become such a burden to actually change, because
yeah.
I think that everyone can agree on the planet, teachers, everyone, that we need changes, but the changes are so slow,
Mm,
and technology and society are moving so fast
mm,
that it's become an impossible cat and mouse game where it's
yeah.
never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. So my take on that is that we should just make a cut and say we're not going to catch up, but what we can do is kind of try to transport ourselves into the future and start from there and just kind
Mm,
of, forget about this that we just didn't manage to do, and that
yeah.
even if we did wrong,
Mm,
we just got to look into the future. And I think that that's where Elon Musk
mm,
has kind of a vision behind that. He's not trying to catch up. He's just playing towards the future, just looking forward.
mm.
And
Yeah.
that comes, at a price as well. Everything has a balance, no doubt.
Yeah, and actually, for me, I'm very interested in education, and I study like Elon Musk. He actually has a kind of like a school
Yeah.
inside SpaceX for those like for the staff, including his kids, study there, and they are more like I would say, it seems like there's no grade, right? There's no level. Kids, every teacher has like when teach kids it all according to what the kids want and
Mhm.
keep reinforce that skills or that set and later on it's like there's no certain thing called curriculum design which the traditional class or teacher has to do like we have to have like SLO student learning objective, right? And also like a lot of curriculum design. And I think the new way, for example, like I learn something like some educational channel. It seems like before teacher will give you a lot of knowledge, right? And student is like a bag, a storage a lot of knowledge. And when there's a quiz, it means teacher asks you question and you start figuring out and give back to teacher. That was the traditional one. Before teacher asks you question and you need to answer right? And now it's the kind of going like a reverse. Now the right now with AI prompt education is more like how to ask the right question to get the right answer. So
Exactly.
so students, because the information is right on top of your finger, right? It's like it's reachable. Everything is around you. So it's less about what you know. It's more about what you wanna know and how you ask
Exactly.
for it. Yeah.
And that's the thing. You get that's what one of the actually, philosophical questions you might say about when the internet was created, and we were given access to all this information, and that you could have eventually maybe a like a digital twin of Aristotle's and be able to talk to him and gather his knowledge. But then the main question rose is to, would we be able to ask the right questions to actually be able to extract that information, right? So,
Yeah.
and that I think that's very real, that today we are presented with this constantly, especially now that we have all the information of humanity on a single phone. Is how, and that's basically how do you go about critical thinking, is how do you use that information. And that's the main bad thing about education today, is that it's not
Mm.
based on that. It's based on information and knowledge hoarding,
Yeah.
right? So you have to learn a lot of things, and then you have to keep them on your mind. And everybody knows that that is just not happening
Yeah.
anymore. You don't need to even remember phone numbers. So
Yeah.
why should you spend time on that? So, but then again, when you were talking about the Musk school, which I find his system very interesting, I think that what I was not like really fond of the idea of just only pushing the good stuff. It's like, I mean, cool. I mean, you have to obviously push for whatever the kid's great at. He has a certain skill set, push for that. But then again, you also have to um make it hard in a way, make it difficult, have some sort, make gives you purpose to
Yeah.
succeed in difficult things. So I think that that balance is also very needed, and I think that kids that are growing in today's world
Mm.
need that above all, because
Yeah.
life itself is not always your way. It's not always the way you want it to be. It's not always
Yeah.
happening the way you want it to be at the right time you wanted that to happen. So you
Yeah.
have to learn to deal with frustration, and frustration can only be achieved by being presented with things that you don't like or that
Yeah,
you
I
dislike in
agree.
a way or that you're not good at. So there's a
Yeah.
healthy exchange of those two, of pushing for the good stuff, but also presenting you with challenges that you are able to defeat in a way. It's kind of a video game, like a video game. Life is more or less like a video game. You need challenges to actually push forward, but then when the challenge becomes a grind, then it sucks. The game sucks. It becomes boring, right? Because the
Yeah.
grinding is awful. So then you need more challenges.
Mm.
And that's basically how you go at it when you think about this concept of lifelong learning,
Yeah.
right? It's how do you implement the system in your life that you will always be learning new stuff. And that's where this whole idea of polymath teaching or
Mm.
polymath learning, I think, comes into place. Is that we are capable in our neuroplasticity to learn from very different sources and very
Mm.
different things. Not only it's not binary, like either sciences and technology on one side or humanities on the other side. They are just mixed. And if you look at in history, the greatest inventors and the greatest artists and the greatest of all greatest have all been polymaths.
Mm.
So there's a reason behind that, because when you come with different ideas to different fields, you change things.
Yeah.
You can take the risk of changing things because you are not vested into that. I learned that when I created, a project that I have that's called Posterity, where we do augmented art. And we launched that in 2016. By that time,
Mm.
doing augmented artworks was
Wow.
really odd in Latin America above all.
Mm.
But I always thought that I was able to think that way and to
Mm.
actually implement that just because I'm not an artist that studied arts. Because
Yeah.
if I were, probably I think that that would be a,
Yeah.
a bastardization of art. Maybe, I don't know.
Mm.
But only as an outsider can I have this different vision of the same
Yes,
thing.
I agree.
So you need that flexibility and you need those things to happen in different ways and areas, and your brain to be as plastic as possible to
Mm.
connect as many places as possible. The more I think that the more you connect,
Mm.
neurologically speaking,
Mm.
the bigger your perspective of
Mm.
projects, problems, life, whatever it's going to be.
Mm.
So the more perspective you have, the better decisions you can make.
Mm.
You have to
Yeah.
just strive for that idea,
Mm.
regardless of. So I think that what we are faced with,
Mm.
Dominique, is that regardless of what technology we're using, it be that AI, be that XR powered by AI, be that XR, be that whatever it is, I
Mm.
think that the problems and solutions are always going to be on the human level.
Mm. Yeah.
It's our own problems that we have to fix. So
Yeah.
those are not going to be problems. So if you thought about it this way, if we didn't have our own biases as humans,
Mm.
then AI wouldn't have biases. So that wouldn't
Yeah.
be an issue to solve at all. And
Yeah.
fourth, that's going
Yeah,
to
I think AI is just
represent.
amplify our current problem. We have bias, and if we take this into metaverse, right? Before it was more like a bully on the website, 2D, and when you close it, it's you couldn't see it. But if you are actually in the 3D space surrounded with it, and it feels like it's more close to your body, right? The harm
Really
will get
tough
amplified. Yeah.
when you think that most of the AIs that we're using today are trained on internet data
Yeah.
or on Reddit conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm doing a study about using hate as a marketing tool. It's called hate kitting, like a
Mm.
term that I want to coin in a way. Hate kitting.
Hmm.
It's using how to use that primal emotion to
Yeah.
drive conversations around your product or whatever. And there are a lot of different, very interesting examples of that. But reading into it, you find that hate on the internet is a real nasty problem, not only because of the first superficial thing that we see, but mostly because AI is trained on hate, on
Mm.
internet hate.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is that we're starting to see this well, what's I can't remember the term right now, but the internet is feeding on itself, you might say, right?
Mm,
It's being trained on slop
mm,
that's being created by AI. So then you start to see this degeneration of information that it's going to boil down to what it sees the most. And if it sees the most of hatred,
mm.
and
Yeah.
things like that, then we're going to have hate-driven AIs.
Mm,
And that is a real issue that it's going to be really hard to solve
mm.
as AI comes nearer and nearer to this end point of not having any more data to chew on.
Yeah.
So it's going to be working on synthesized data, and then it's going to, degenerate probably, or I don't know. I think there's a lot of things going to happen with AI,
Mm,
and a lot of them do not have to be with bigger models. I think that
mm.
models are going to start to shrink
Yeah.
in useful terms in a way. So
Yeah.
you don't need a 400 billion model to run anything on your computer, for example. You cannot run it and you don't need it,
Mm,
but you could use a 1 billion model to run something locally that would be useful to you in a project or in work.
mm,
So I think that we're going to be turning into that kind of, instead of going full blown humongous AI
mm.
data center,
Yeah.
maybe it's going to go into more of a more efficient chipsets, more
Yeah.
efficient way to code. So it would be more energy efficient as well,
Yeah.
and being able to run it locally so it can do certain specific tasks. So there's a lot of things going to happen, and that all basically also fuels this idea of the future metaverse.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting how AI and, for example, a lot of the things that they're working on in Meta are basically being done to feed into this whole idea of the metaverse.
Yeah.
Even if it's not publicly said,
Yeah.
when you look into, for example, SAM 2 model that was just released not too long ago,
Mm,
this is the segment anything model they have where they can run video and imagery,
mm.
and they can segment and
Oh,
basically
yes.
help know what's in the picture, right?
Yes.
The uses for this are mind blowing in many different areas and levels.
Mm,
But as we get closer
mm,
to more spatially aware AI
mm,
that's accessible to developers,
mm,
it comes into place that we're getting nearer and nearer to the idea of this fusion of virtual reality and real reality that, in my opinion, is going to be the real metaverse, as it's going to
mm,
be called, or whatever. It's not the metaverse is. I don't think the metaverse ever was an idea to be had from a virtual reality perspective of being out of reality.
mm,
I never thought that would ever work.
mm,
But with true AR and having, this duality of digital and real, and having this superbly designed device that can bridge the two, I think that is very, very, very real, and probably within the next 10 years.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that for metaverse, right, it's more like a start with a fiction, and then it start becomes like a people want to build. And I think for right now, it's more like we all know that Roblox and also Finite and a lot of like
Fortnite.
online
Yeah.
Fortnite. Yeah, all those like online like a multiple player types of like for younger generation, it's super popular. And right now they are working on like they've already released like for example text prompt to 3D model. And on GDC, I went to Meta's booth and I saw they have text prompt to 3D as well. So what do you see these types of like a very easy to create, and Meta right now is also having like a program for creators to create like some worlds, right? And encourage creator to create. So what do you see in the future? Are we going to live in metaverse like we used to define, or it will be more like a blending in the world? Because you see, VR headset, a lot of people said that VR headset is more limited, and the AR glass will be more likely to be wildly adapt. So what do you see the metaverse that we used to define versus the new metaverse that might become reality?
Yeah, to me, the bet has always been on true AR. I think that
Hmm.
always true augmented reality as mixed as we know it today as mixed reality.
Hmm.
I think that's always been the winner. I've always thought about virtual reality like a really impressive tool for
Hmm.
certain things,
Yeah.
especially in training and
Yeah.
simulation. I think that's
Education, training,
awesome.
entertainment. Yeah.
But when you think about something that can be used by massive amounts of people and that could make sense
Hmm.
and that could bridge the gap, as I mentioned before, between the digital world and reality that we have now.
Hmm.
Because now we have a digital world in our phones.
Hmm.
It's a whole digital reality where you have a post box full of mail
Yeah.
and you have web pages that can say that, back in the day, 25 years ago, we spoke
Yeah.
about the internet like having apartments, right? At some point, in the sense that you had like a small place.
Hmm.
And if you recall, around the early 2000, we have a hotel, which actually you had your own place in, and it's very similar to what we have as an Horizon home, right, on Meta devices. So then I kind of lost the idea of where this was going.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is that, you know, everything's working towards the direction of easier creation, no doubt,
Hmm.
and easier implementation as well, because it's what we see a lot within institutions and governments or whatever is that how do you implement this within a closed, say, maybe big company or a government setting?
Hmm.
You have to invest a lot of money. You have to buy all the devices, you have to buy the software, you have to connect it all, you have to do a whole bunch of things. So I think that then, as near as we become to this little gadget that can bridge the gap, I think
Hmm.
it's unavoidable that that's going to happen. And eventually, I do believe that it could replace the smartphone.
Hmm.
In that sense, I mean, we're still far from that. Like in realistic terms, it's
Hmm.
in 10 to 15 years, maybe. But technology is moving at such a rapid pace that I mean, whatever projections you might have how this is going to work, you could just change and have it in 5 years
Yeah.
because the advancements are completely insane and
Hmm.
they're just upending each other the whole time. It's
Yeah.
innovation after innovation. But yeah, I think that we have to think more about how we're going to use these technologies, not only on the XR kind of
Hmm.
things that we've been doing it for years, thinking
Yeah.
about what we're going to use it, but how are we going to use XR with AI? How
Hmm.
is this going to play out for the general public?
Hmm.
Because it's not about thinking XR for us
Yeah.
tech savvy, tech fan, or
Yeah.
XR fan people, right? We're thinking about how you get that pleasure of using an immersive device or having a very cool augmented reality experience to just regular people that can
Hmm.
understand its potential, and not only on entertainment. 'Cause that's the one thing, it's that we are always looking for solutions that can bring forward the correct ethical use of XR technologies for education,
Yeah.
but in the long run, it's what's gonna win. It's gonna be entertainment. That's
Yeah.
what's really gonna
Entertainment.
win the game.
I think right now you see like everybody. It seems like education. I have a question mark because um, education won't be the traditional way of educate. You can just have a chatbot like a Grok 3 and you can learn everything from just talking to it. Like, oh, I want to learn Python, create a Python course for me. For example, right now when I code Unity, I usually said that, oh, create an inventory system for me. And when I see something that I don't know and I say, please put a note for every lines and I want to read it. And if I don't know, I copy and paste that certain section and I ask like the chatbot and what's this? Explain more. Give me more samples. So pretty much I can just learn by talking to that chatbot. And I remember I saw one kind of like I listened to one podcast. It was with the recently very popular like a text to app. You text, you put your idea to text, and it will export to an app for you. One kind of like a teacher or like I don't know teacher mindset founder during COVID. He used that it's the platform is called Replit. He used Replit to text and prompt and learn how to code. He doesn't know how to code, and he create an LMS system, large learning management system. It's called Magic School for K-12 teachers to put their course online. And right now, it has like a 4 million active users right now. And
Amazing.
he come up with an idea. He doesn't know how to code during COVID time. He just keep building it, and then he start having users. So for me, I think there are a lot of like opportunities, and people start saying that, wow, this is the time that you need to seize it because AI really help people. And I also listened to one talk. People start saying that, oh, it's not fair, right? Because people, for example, Sam Altman create chatbot like a chat GPT using all the data online, and he didn't even pay, and he charged us, right? He charged the user. It's not really fair, but you know they have free version. And I remember the speaker in the podcast that I listened. He mentioned that okay, so Steve Jobs, we all said that he contributed to the world a lot, and if you see that he said that he has like a 60 billion net worth before he passed away. So he said that now it has like I don't know how many billion iPhone exist, and each iPhone is whatever price. So if you do the math, when you buy one iPhone, you just pay Steve Jobs $3 of his invention. So he said, comparatively of your productivity and how convenient it is, you actually pay Steve Jobs not so much. So if we see this scale of work, like, oh, we complain like, oh, Grok, or like a ChatGPT, right? Oh, why they can be profitable like this way, right? But a lot of people use those chatbots for free, and they got a lot of like increase their productivity. So that's what I want to say is that when we start seeing somebody accumulate their wealth so fast, but when you start compare to what you get from them, you actually get more than you pay for them. So that's what I'm.
The thing is that when you start to think about how quote unquote easy
Hmm,
using technology makes things,
hmm,
it's not actually that easy, is it? Because then if you want to do the Magic School LMS on your own,
yeah.
you're not going to get the 4 million users, right? So
Wow.
what's inside that formula that makes it a better donut, right? What's that better donut that's not the donut that you have? Even if you have the same technology and the same knowledge,
Yeah.
the same capacity to access knowledge, then how does that work? What makes a good business, and what makes a good entrepreneur a good entrepreneur is,
Hmm,
and I think that it falls beyond just the tools that you use, and I always boil it down to human interaction and this
yeah.
soft skills and just how good of a leader you are,
Hmm,
and that will make a good business.
yeah.
But then again, you crash into the idea of really long discussion about basically how our system works and how communism and capitalism work. And then it's this everlasting discussion of are workers part of the product, or I mean,
Oh,
should they earn for the product that they're creating, or is it just the
yeah.
entrepreneur or the owner or the ec- great extractor um, of the wealth and production capacity of the number of people that you work with, say, with, or that work for you.
Mm.
Because then when you look into back again into the Industrial Revolution examples,
Mm.
when the first automatic weavers came along, one machine could do the work of maybe six people.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then this entrepreneurial person could have six people working in the factory and be doing the work of 36 persons.
Yeah.
So then he would obviously make the same amount of money as if he had 36 people, but
Mm.
he's only spending six. So he's making 28 for him
Mm.
just by being smart enough to use the technology.
Yeah.
So that comes into question, obviously, that, and that's where the Luddites were born, basically, in this whole situation of
Yeah.
the weaving mills and all this, is that they were not against technology and advancements in their craft. They were against the inhumanity of the way that it was presented, in a way
Yeah.
that for each machine that could do the work of six people, you had five people that lost their jobs,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of what we're seeing right now.
Mm.
But with technology, it's the same thing. We even have the same arguments nowadays that
Mm.
we had 200 years ago. So what we have to do as
Mm.
society, and I think a lot of us are working towards that end, is how to make this more equal,
Mm.
more accessible. So,
Yeah.
that, I mean, how to kind of bridge the gap or make the
Mm.
gap a bit smaller. But if you look at it realistically, what's happening is that the gap's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have this
Yeah.
whole technocratic elite
Mm.
that's even untouchable by governments. And
Untouchable.
insane.
Yes. The government even sell the cars for the super rich, right? Like the car salesman.
So
So
you have that situation going on, and that is definitely not good. But I don't know, Dom. I think that wherever there's people, there's going to be problems.
yes, we are the
Problematic
problem.
species, we are a problematic species. Everywhere we go, there's some kind of issue or problem, or we
Yeah.
find a way to not make it as good as it could be. And it's going to be okay, but it's not going to be 100% okay. So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
how it is. So we have
Yeah.
to find ways to deal with this reality of us as
Yeah.
human beings, imperfect beings, and support each other. I think it's
Yeah.
all about collaboration, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's for me. If you guys listening to this and you got like this far into this conversation, is that what we have to do is to join forces and collaborate and help each other and be there for each other. I mean, we are not helping by being more and more introverted, or more and more just being capable of seeing what bothers us without considering or empathizing with the other part of society that is not you.
Hmm.
So I think that collaboration is the greatest thing, and that we should thrive for and push for.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you that right now it's like even though you see like everything becomes so cheap and yeah, and I remember I saw one like a Silicon Valley like a investor long time ago, like 2 years ago, he predict in the future expertise will be nearly free and labors will be nearly free. And I think I agree with this. You see, like a robot start become a human form. And yesterday I just saw Boston Dynamic. The robot is walk like a human and even do some dance like a flip, like doing some like a very hard, like even hip hop dance. So a lot of things before we were marking like, oh, right now a lot of like a community college they are training the blue column types of like workers because for example plumbing because AI is only locked on the screen that couldn't come out and grab your job, but now you see an army of robots is coming out. So I think back to the history, remember the time like I don't know how what century, probably like a 15th 16th century, people, a farmer working for the owner which live in the castle like a super long time ago, they provide their labor and they just got some so-called salary. But whatever they build, the land is not belong to them. Maybe in the future, super long time, probably like 100 years, maybe the landlord will say, "Oh, okay, you since you work here for so many generations, you can get the piece of land." So
Highly doubtful that you get that piece of land.
I think
Highly
so.
doubtful.
Yeah, highly
Highly
doubtful.
doubtful.
So pretty much, I can see the enslave, the slave types of mindsetting. If you put into this current world, it's
Today,
still
yeah, the
it's just the
same.
same thing. It's like we are the
Same.
cold farmer, right? Or we are the
Yeah,
design labor, and we build a product for the castle, the owner of the land, and
that's
it's not really being protected. It's just the same mindset of the in the past, long time ago, and now. And if you see like right now for big tech, right, you can see a lot of things that are happening in big tech. And I feel like when I work in big tech, I feel very similar to like a very long time ago. We are the farmer. We work hard and farm other people's land. And when there's a harvest, we get, you know, a bowl of rice or some
yeah.
a piece of
It's
bread.
it
Yeah,
is
that's
the
it.
same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no difference. There are extraction machines, but that's just how the system works in the sense of capitalism, right? I mean,
Mm,
and there's this argument behind the idea that if you didn't have those incentives
mm,
for geniuses or entrepreneurial spirits
yeah.
to pursue their dreams to make a profit out of that,
Yeah.
then there wouldn't be anything. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's just malformation, it's that we are educated
Mm,
in wrong ways, you might say. I don't know. I think that, on one side of reality, capitalism won. It
mm,
completely won the system, so it just works that way. But then again, you think that if we were taught from a very early age that collaboration and working together forever is the way to go, then capitalism doesn't have much space there.
mm,
Not just caring of your own.
mm,
um so I don't know, maybe the whole production thing has to change.
mm.
We are obviously on the verge of a different revolution,
Yeah.
kind of like the industrial revolution.
Huh.
I don't know how far we are from it, but we are definitely on that path.
Yeah.
Maybe we just burn servers instead of castles, but some things will get burnt, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Uh, and we will have a different society afterwards with different framing of the things that we do, because it's not only about what we do, it's how it's framed, the reasons behind.
Hmm.
I think that that's what's been skewed in the process, is that I don't have to go to a job because I need money. I want to do a job because I love working, and I get
Mm.
paid because of that, and to make a good living, which makes me happy, which in turn makes me a better worker. Cool. I mean, I'm cool with that idea. We have purpose. We
Mm.
love, if you do what you love. But then if you're not working on what you're loving, and you're obviously obligated to go to work,
Mm.
and that whole experience is, it's peer pressure and
Mm.
depression and
Yeah.
slavery, basically, then it doesn't make any sense. We're not robots. We're not
Yeah.
production machines. And I
Yeah.
think that's where robotics will play a major
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
in society,
Yeah.
in the sense that we don't have to do things that are just, wrong. I don't know. It's such a humongous ethical and philosophical question, is behind the idea of what are we going to do, or what would we do if we had more time,
Hmm.
more free time? We would just
Yeah.
spend there doom scrolling on Instagram, or could we actually eventually move in a different direction
Hmm.
of, making the human species great again? How about
Yeah.
for a campaign?
Yeah, I think for I listened to one like I don't know podcast. It seems like the person mentioned like in the future it will be content creator or whoever create. You create your own brand or your own product, and you have tons of AI, almost nearly free AI expertise like owns tons of doctor degree, pass a
Yeah,
lot
like
of
AI
bars.
agents.
Yeah,
Uh,
AI agents. So every human will create his or her own product, and all the AI agent will be the team. The kind of like before you have to hire, right? I remember I teach one course called Coding for Designer and Artists in Kenyatta College. Every student, if you see their final within 18 weeks, they can create a full game. And before they didn't even know how to use Unity. They don't know how to code. And the way that I teach them was I teach them how to use ChatGPT to write a code and ask ChatGPT to teach them what's going on. And then also use, for example, 11 Labs for the conversation, and also Suno for background music. A lot of stuff like a 3D model, I asked them to use Trellis. So a lot of all the asset preparation before you need a team to work on it. But right now, all the AI and it's free to use. So usually they use the free trial before running out. So they were able to create some pretty decent work. And the question is, so that's why I propose to more like a more the full-time professor, like my course will be. That's because right now the bar, before it takes so long to learn to hoard all the C sharp knowledge, right? To do it. But now you see like a student just graduated from high school or in community college can build a game, decent game in 18 weeks. And what's next? Maybe our bar should be how to create a, a game that everybody likes to play. That's harder.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's
So,
a
yeah.
V in that idea is that, as I mentioned before, it's not only technological prowess,
Yeah.
it takes a lot more than that to make something successful.
Mm,
So then, now, like, basically what we're talking about right now is that
mm,
the technical barriers that were once before
mm,
very hard to go against
mm.
have been completely taken down
Yeah.
and being taken down. So
Mm,
now all that we need are better marketers,
mm,
better salespeople, better managers, better leaders.
mm,
So are we really focusing on that aspect?
mm.
So how are these things going to change the social dynamics of work?
Yeah.
Since, as you mentioned, you don't have this barrier that you needed. For example, I'm going to give you a very practical example.
Mm,
When I started building websites back in 1996,
mm,
really old school.
mm,
We did it obviously HTML by code,
mm.
and then eventually Dreamweaver came along, and
Oh,
that was
wow.
like, oh, Dreamweaver. That's for people that don't know how to code,
Oh,
right?
Dreamweaver, I remember when I was in Art Center back in
Even
2008, I learned Dreamweaver and now it's
Yeah, and
obsolete.
before Dreamweaver, there was Hot Dog, and there was a bunch of other graphic interface editors for HTML. But then eventually WordPress came along,
Yeah,
and that was like awful. It's
yeah.
like, oh my God, you use WordPress. It means that you didn't code anything of your website. It's like, and because you needed so much knowledge to be able to make a CMS like WordPress
Mm,
without using WordPress, honestly, you had to know about database relationships, database hosting, all the coding of the backend, you know, this humongous system. Now you had it for free.
mm,
And that was like an impossible idea for us as developers that we've gathered and hoarded all this information and all these techniques
mm.
that we used, as ninjas and samurais to go over the hurdles of, cross-browser websites and whatnot. And then this came over and changed it all. And now it's over what? Over 60% of the internet is hosted on WordPress sites. Who now, if anyone ever creates a website from scratch, like it's impossible. No one. So in 20 years time, even less than 20 years, the whole dynamics of development behind websites changed dramatically and exponentially, not only in pricing, because what I used to charge back in the year 2000 for creating a website, I
Mm,
couldn't charge it today for creating a website. No way. I mean,
mm.
I could charge a lot more for
Yeah,
different aspects of that website development,
Yeah.
but not the work itself.
Yeah.
You sell something else. You either sell the service, or you either sell post sale service, or you either sell new features or something that the client is willing to buy for.
Mm.
Because then again, the game changes in the sense that you are not getting new businesses because of the cool technology that you're using. You're getting new businesses of because of the problems that you're solving through these new cool technologies that you're using.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a different perspective of the same game, you might say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think right now everything, like for example, like a long time ago, like 2 years ago when I teach at Design Lab, I saw one app or like a platform. It's called like Da Vinci or something it's an AI tool that plug into Figma and you text prompt and it will generate an app for you. So
Yeah,
when my students saw this, and I
amazing.
remember Design Lab, it costs probably about like a 10K for tuition for a student to graduate from the entire three cohorts, like a basic, intermediate, and advanced, those types of things. It took them probably a year to graduate from bootcamp. And the student was like, wow, if you see like a and I said that yeah, if you text prompt and you see the UI and it's better than my student or like the beginner can do.
Yeah,
So I personally think for the AI tools are more for senior or for people with ideas. For the junior, yeah, so that's why I'm like still like in school. Like for example, when I was in I was serving as a committee academic senate back in Kenyatta like last year, and there was a debating should teacher allows AI or like a student to use AI during class or using for assignment. For me, it's like wow, it's great. You can do that, but for people who teach, for example, like a English, like a writing or anything, like a more like a skills, I start worry about like wow, if for example like a high school in Taiwan, they have a debate like whether in high school they should allow kids to bring their use AI chatbot to finish assignment or use like even a phone during class. So I don't know this types of like oh beginner to advanced that types of things should yeah I don't know it's just like some gaps between the entire tech industry and workforce and also education for the
I
minors.
think that things just change ways that we cannot fathom from
Yeah.
a standpoint. I'm going to give you another anecdote that I saw on the David Eagleman podcast last week. It was
Hmm.
a very good anecdotal comment about
Yeah.
when the print was created, right,
Hmm.
and books started to emerge. A lot of scholars were really against the idea of printing books because
Hmm.
now everyone could have access to that information. You
Yeah.
just go into the library, pick a book
Hmm.
where all that knowledge is stored, and
Hmm.
you could read that and learn it. And you didn't have to memorize it.
Hmm.
You had someone to go fetch it.
Hmm.
So they were against the books. So imagine that, right? And I think that this is what happens repeatedly over history is that our own capacity of trying to evaluate the future from our present perspective that was constructed from a past, it's almost impossible to actually understand or factually project what's going to happen because we do
Yeah.
not understand that completely. So I think things are just going to change. For example, when technology started to get into education, um, the teachers that are actually using technology in their processes are using it
Yeah.
mindfully, thinking as to, okay, I know these guys have access. Now I'm gonna make him think. So how do you make him think? Maybe you do an essay that you're going to
Yeah.
have to explain how you got to that essay. Maybe so there are many different ways in how teaching will change and
Mm,
adapt to
yeah.
using technology in this way, because it makes no sense to keep working towards the
Yeah.
idea,
The
trying to
original.
memorize Encyclopedia Britannica when you
Yeah.
have it on your hand, smartphone.
Yeah.
And sooner than later, you'll not even have it on your smartphone. You'll have it on your face. You'll have it in your brain.
Yeah.
You just have that information. It'll
Yeah.
just be there for you to access.
Yeah.
So we need to think about, how do you use that information? How do you think about the problems?
Mm,
How do you think about the solutions, so
mm,
that you can use this infinite amount of data that you have
yeah.
towards connecting the right dots to creating better solutions to more different and difficult problems.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that future generations actually have a chance
Mm,
if they develop this idea of connecting the dots properly, which
mm,
only comes by if you think in a polymath way, very
mm,
broad
mm,
perspective,
mm.
that will be able to fix the difficult problems that we haven't been able to solve,
Yeah.
because they'll have a broad, even broader perspective, or different tools to make that perspective even broader than we could ever do with
Mm,
our current technologies, or the technologies that we've used historically to try
mm,
to fix, say, global warming or
mm.
pollution or whatever, you know.
Yeah. I think, yeah, what you say is right. Is that, for example, like I remember one like English teacher asked me, like, oh, if my assignment is all done, she has been teaching like the English for a very long time, and assignment is all the same. And I said that maybe change the assignment to write something that ChatGPT can, you copy and paste the title of the assignment, and ChatGPT can write much better than even the professor, right?
Yeah.
Maybe change that types of assignment to publish an ebook to Amazon and have like like 100 copy sale by the end of the course. That is hard because if you want to create something that people interested, I think it's harder than just put the things. Like I told,
Yeah.
yeah, I told the teacher, maybe you allow students to use AI, but you also raise the bar of the assignment to 100 times harder. Like, oh, you need to
And
publish a book.
if you think about it from this perspective of the polymath learning that I'm talking about, is
Yeah.
exactly what you're mentioning. Because if I give you that task of making something X and having it succeed in X way, then you
Yeah.
have to think from many different perspectives of the whole
Yeah.
funnel of
Yeah. How to
activities,
sell
from
it, how to
design,
promote it.
diagrammation, the I don't know, the platform management. If you're going to invest in ads, so
Hmm.
you have to start thinking from many different perspectives, and that gives you
Yeah.
what
That's more
I'm talking about.
entrepreneur, less
Yeah,
of like
because you need
a
to
worker.
understand problems. So I mean, the the way that you understand the problems is going to be the way that you can be able to find good solutions. So
Hmm.
the better you are at detecting problems and
Hmm.
framing them in a way
Hmm.
that you can solve them, it's going to be basically what makes the bread.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
going to have tools to fix whatever comes to you, be that physical or digital.
Hmm. Yeah, wow. We discuss a lot of like XR, AI, and also current problem and how education can help. And what's the one thing that you still like to share that we haven't touched on yet?
That we didn't manage to touch on today's podcast is definitely neuro-inclusive immersive education, how maybe immersive technologies and XR coupled with AI can be like a real useful tool for helping neurodiverse people uh, uh, learn in a different way that is more helpful to them and to society.
Hmm.
I think that there's a lot of things to talk about in that regard, and that could be a real change to education and to society as a whole. So
Oh,
I think that that's somewhere that we need to look for in the next couple of years.
yeah. Yeah, I think
because
that,
we
yeah.
will be getting a lot more people with learning disabilities of some way or another, because our brains are coupled with our real experience, and younger kids have been brought up in a attention deficit
Oh,
uh,
yeah, yeah,
environment. Basically,
yeah.
it's really fast paced and
Yeah,
whatnot.
how
So
can I even
they will
focus
expect
on
the same from
things? Yeah,
education. They
yeah,
don't have the time or the patience
yeah,
to
right.
go through the same process that we did 30 years ago. It's
Yeah.
impossible. So I think that XR and AI coupled
Hmm.
will be like the ultimate tool to
Hmm.
start really changing the way that we learn and the way that we teach. It's
Yeah.
a twofold equation.
Yeah, I read an article by a professor. It said he mentioned that right now the college student, even the Ivy League college student, they couldn't read one book, finish one book in the entire 4 years. They couldn't read a book from cover to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, right now I have like a passion project that I'm thinking about. Maybe can turn into a business idea. I turn literature, because I think the reason why the world becomes so messy, even though I think the technology should also, even though we grow our technology, we should also grow our empathy, humanity part. Because if we just do technology alone, you see how destructive that Ukraine
It is.
and
Exactly.
Russian war, because without understanding each other, I mean, what's the point of creating the most destructive drone and trying to destroy other people's house and kill people? I
Yeah.
mean, if we just keep developing the technology alone, we will just kill ourselves anyway. So I do think maybe start with I really think a literature is the combination of understanding, empathize another culture, another world in a fun way. Once you, for example, if I read a literature from in Russian or in other world, you feel like wow, it grounded on some empathy, human level, but also you understand
The
why they
arts.
act. Yeah,
It's the
why they.
arts. Be that music, literature, dance,
Yeah, it's the soul.
theater. It's
Yeah,
it's humans connecting through emotions, and
yeah,
that's what XR has that
yeah,
no other technology has. And that's the
yeah,
beautiful thing about XR, is that
yeah,
we can connect through emotions, through a living, to a shared experience, and that is amazing. And
yeah,
that I think that's what we need to work on the most regarding narrative and immersive narratives, and how that connects emotionally with the end user, and that helps drive business as well. I mean, it has, as I always, there's a balance. There's the balance of economy
hmm,
and social and economic well-being, and on the other side is what's the impact
yeah,
that what you're doing has on the other person, and it has to be a positive impact. So if it's not
yeah.
positive, stop doing it. Basically, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, cool. So, yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. We release episodes weekly. If you enjoy this conversation, check out our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Support us by giving us a follow and a 5-star rating, or subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Thank you and see you next time.